Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. The next big section in my complete Lore of Dragons series covering Destiny's Ahamkara will be on its way soon. To hold you over for now though, I wanted to discuss a smaller but more immediately relevant topic regarding the upcoming Season of the Wish. So, for as much as the egg in the center of the Imbaru engine has been getting a lot of talk, this I think is something that has been discussed a whole lot less, and it is simply the fact that there is indeed another Ahamkara egg out there, one that is being held by Mara Sov. This is different because this one is taken. In this lore video I wanted to talk a little bit more about these two eggs in relation to each other, talk plainly about the possibilities that it could potentially lead to at the very end, but also I wanted to try and sort of explain the circumstances around these two eggs, and what one being taken and one not being taken might mean. I'll also talk about what this could mean for the future of the Ahamkara should both these eggs be given a chance at life. So I'm going to talk about Savathun's egg before we move on to Mara's egg. We'll then look at the further implications when we're all up to speed. The Ahamkara egg that we recovered from the center of the Imbaru engine is of course a massive deal for the extinct species of wish dragons. Riven was, well, she was meant to be the last known Ahamkara, and now she has seemingly lost that title. This egg is, at least according to Eris Morn, probably one of Riven's clutch. There is no concrete confirmation aside from Eris's word on that, but Eris has been pretty knowledgeable on all these things so far, so it's pretty safe to assume that that is the case, until something comes along and says otherwise. Lots of assumptions in this video are most certainly based off of that, so yeah, we're going to run with that assumption, but it is an assumption. Chronologically speaking though, I think that it probably is more likely the case that, yeah, it is indeed one of Riven's, because, well, yeah, she was the last Ahamkara for a while. The Great Hunt, which wiped out all the other Ahamkara, was conducted back in the days of the late Dark Age to early City Age. That means Riven would have been the only Ahamkara around to even attempt the process of reproduction for a very long time, so all the other eggs might have either been found and destroyed or degraded with time. Riven would have been the only Ahamkara around, and so yeah, this is probably one of her eggs. We also know that she was laying eggs because we found a variety of taken Ahamkara eggs in the Dreaming City, so it only reinforces the possibility that this was one of Riven's clutch. We also know that Savathun and Riven have interacted before, so the chances of her having moved one of Riven's offspring is also there, but we'll talk more about this in a second. Interestingly, Eris gives us another little tidbit that I wanted to pick up on here. It's not a particularly important note, but it goes over naming conventions for young Ahamkara. Take a listen to this really quick line.
You must leave the Spire at once. Ahamkara are powerful beings. Even a newly hatched whim is dangerous. Wait.
So Eris is letting us know something there potentially, which is kind of interesting all in itself. It seems that just as young ducks are called ducklings or young chickens are called chicks, there's also a smaller abbreviated or relevant and associated name for young wish dragons, namely a whim. It's very cleverly done, quite appropriate. Not immediately relevant, but it's good to know going forward. I think there are two questions really, for the moment though, around this main egg that we found in the Imbaru engine, and it stems from the egg's appearance itself. The first is, when did Savathun acquire this egg, and the second by extension is, how has this egg remained free of taken corruption? Or perhaps, how was it removed from the corruption in the first place if it was originally corrupted? The answer to this first question we might know because there is only one time in the lore that's been recorded when Riven has explicitly met with Savathun, and that's at a point after the death of Oryx but before the events of Forsaken. This moment is actually something that was portrayed in Dynasty. Thank you again to everybody who worked on that. I believe that this in particular was animated by Kevin Ayosi. I'm going to go ahead and show this scene. And thanks again to Leviathan, to Reki, and to Shackle for helping to create the voice of Riven. Yes, I'm saying all of this because I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. Because you know what? Damn it, we paid for Dynasty. Let's go ahead and use the clips when it's relevant. Here's the scene of Riven and Savathun.
Riven. Today I have a visitor. She reminds me of the king, yet subtler. Nothing announces her arrival. Her will does not flow through the system in open challenge against her enemies. She knows that though I am taken, I am beholden to no one. So, I ask her if she wishes to take up those strings. She does. And I take a new shape. My cage loses its purpose. I can tell this is not a part of her grand design. This is an introduction. She is at play. Through our new bond, I glimpse her intention. And I hope she remains at play.
Man, if this is anything close to what actually went down in the lore, then boy, creepy. The reality is though, when we did do Dynasty, we did actually have to cut down on some of the actual dialogue for that scene to fit. So here is the full reading of the lore card this comes from. This is from the Boots of the Great Hunt. The Techeuns are poor company. Like me, they are taken. But I am Riven. My thoughts are my own. They do not speak to me. When they open their mouths, they emit ugly sounds, incomprehensible. I am afflicted by tedious repetition. But today I have a visitor. She reminds me of the king, yet subtler. Nothing announces her arrival. Her will does not flow through the system in open challenge against her enemies, though there are many here she would call enemy. And her will would not flow, it would crash. I did not notice her. That means the light did not notice her. She knows that though I am taken, I am beholden to no one. So I ask her if she wishes to take up those strings. She does, and I take a new shape. My cage loses its purpose. I can tell this is not a part of her grand design. This is an introduction. She is at play. Through our bond, I glimpse her intention, and I hope she remains at play. Most of those who bargain with me do not win. She releases vibrant, unrestrained bursts of air from her face. I do not. For those of you who didn't quite pick up on it at the very end there, I believe that's to say that Savathûn was laughing as they made a bargain. So, this time is clearly when Riven has her own faculties back after having been taken by Oryx for a while. It's not clear if part of her bargain with Savathûn was the release of one of her offspring from the bonds of taken control. We know that wish magic might be capable of such things, but we still don't know if that was what happened. If there was a moment for this transfer of one of Riven's young to occur, it might well have been in that moment right there. Riven also notes that this moment in Savathûn's plan is an introduction. Whilst it's meant to be relative in Destiny terms to show that this is the first time that Savathûn is really exerting her influence over anything the Guardians have seen, it is also talking about, I think, Riven and Savathûn's relationship. This being an introduction is something which implies that this is the first time that Riven has really seen Savathûn's influence too. So it makes me think that this might be the first time that Riven and Savathûn met. If that's the case, it means that there are even fewer opportunities for Savathûn to have grabbed an uncorrupted egg from Riven. But again, that's not confirmed either. If bargains were made and an egg were to be exchanged, it was likely in this moment or one that swiftly followed on from it. But that still doesn't answer our other question, namely, how come this egg isn't corrupted? It seems unlikely, given Oryx's invasion of the Dreaming City, that there would have been a single egg that escaped whilst all the others were infested with taken corruption. Perhaps if the corruption originally started and came from the curse on the Dreaming City, that might render an explanation as to how one was spared, but even then, I don't think it's clear that this is the case, and I don't necessarily believe that that is the origin of the taken corruption in the eggs. Oryx is meant to have flowed his entire will outwards into Mara Sov's throne world, and to have built some kind of background entrance into the Dreaming City. Corrupting the Ahamkara eggs might have been relatively easy. On Twitter, though, I need to go ahead and come clean about this, I made a statement that there was next to a 0% possibility that this egg was previously taken, the one that we find in the Imbaru engine, that is. Now, I'm not so sure, because I've looked at the chronology and honestly, I don't know. It just goes to show even I can have moments where I put my foot in my mouth, but moving on, the reasons for me being so adamant about that quote-unquote 0% possibility that the egg was previously taken is because, well, we simply don't know if there is a way to untake something like an Ahamkara egg. In the instance of the Techians, who are some of the few beings who've been released from taken corruption, there is a bunch that can be inferred by the process. Things to do with their balance as beings of light and dark might explain the process in the vaguest of terms, but even then, there is no solid explanation for how that's done either. But I can't deny now, upon further investigation of the timelines and how things worked out, the interactions between Riven and Savathûn and the nature of the Ahamkara themselves, it might be possible that Savathûn's egg was previously corrupted and was then cleansed. I would point out one thing in particular. We still don't know what the purpose of Savathûn's experiments with the light in the spire of Savathûn actually were. Initially, it was stated that this was partly so that she could expand her understanding of the light, but my question is, as always, to what ends was that understanding being expanded? Because ultimately, we still don't know that, and Savathûn was not going to merely experiment with the light for fun and giggles. It was going to be one of those moments where she did it for a purpose, and we still don't know what that purpose was. I don't know if the light can uncorrupt a taken entity, but if it can, maybe that's part of the secret that Savathûn unlocked. Then again, that is all speculation about the egg that we've seen recently, and, well, yeah, we have no idea what is true or not. I think it's just important to know everything I've talked about because that's laying the foundation and laying out the possibilities. There is no easy explanation for what's happened. There is no easy way to sit there and actually show the chain of events that led up to this egg's abduction, whether it was given willingly by Riven, whether it was already corrupted and then cleansed, whether for some reason it was saved. None of it's clear. I think it's just important to know those possibilities. But again, that's all the speculation and stuff we have about the first egg. What about the other egg, the one in Mara's possession? Let's take a trip back in time, because I'm sure that some of you haven't heard or seen of this. Back in the Helm, when one of its wings opened into the Dreaming City during the year of the Beyond Light release, we could see Mara's entire open Queen's Chamber that eventually led back to where Savathûn was being held in her crystalline prison. This had antechambers off to the left and right, and in one of them, off to the right, you could clearly see a taken Ahamkara egg. That egg being taken is what mattered. It was much like the other eggs that we destroyed with Wishender around the Dreaming City. The egg being preserved is perhaps a direct response to our destruction of the rest of Riven's clutch. Mara originally aligned herself with Riven and the Ahamkara so that she might be able to harness a unique source of power. She did this originally for her own ends, namely the end of protecting her people and the Dreaming City. Having the final Ahamkara egg, even a taken one, is potentially a similarly remarkable source of unique paracausal power, something that the Queen of the Reef might have been able to use at some point to her advantage, or might be looking to use to her advantage in the future. Now, with all of that being understood, there is a legitimate question that comes up, and it aligns with our previous line of inquiry around the egg that we found in the Imbaru engine, and that's simply this. If Savathûn was able to remove the taken corruption from an Ahamkara egg, is it possible that the one we saw in Mara's quarters was something that Savathûn stole and then removed the corruption from? Not impossible, but also not confirmable. It's something where we've not seen either side of things, and we don't know if the other egg still exists, is in Mara's possession, or was stolen. There is no lore on the egg, we simply know that it existed. When Savathûn broke out of her crystalline prison, everyone was fairly distracted, so it might have been a decent time for some kind of Hive asset to infiltrate the Dreaming City and then remove the taken Ahamkara egg. But that's very speculative, and it would have been a really hard task to accomplish for anyone, considering that Xivu Arath's forces were bearing down on the already alarmed and alert Awoken Guardians. The entire Dreaming City had effectively been turned into a war zone at this point, so it would need to be one hell of an extraction operation, very delicate and finessed, especially for the Hive, something that isn't typical. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen, and that also means we need to keep that possibility in mind. Personally, I don't know if that's what's happened here, but for the moment, everything I follow on from is going to be making the assumption that the two eggs we've seen are separate, and that Mara Sov did not have hers stolen by Savathûn and then have it uncorrupted. I guess the next question leading on from that is, what's the difference between these two eggs if they are two separate eggs, and if one is taken and one is not? Realistically, this is the most important detail of the entire video, so buckle in, this is what you really need to listen to. I think it comes down to understanding what the Taken are. The Taken are created in a process by which a creature is abducted through a tear in reality. We aren't quite sure of the exact process that actually occurs as the victim is corrupted, but we do know that in the process, their will is removed and they are husked out, their personality remaining as but a mere flicker of their former selves, a dying light against an overwhelming darkness. And in that darkness, they are granted new abilities and powers, they are made deadlier. These new husked-out Taken forces are then returned to the material plane and are utterly obedient to whoever corrupted them, which we know to be the Witness. Riven is the one exception to this rule, and there are a few reasons for that. First of all, she was able to gain her independence over Oryx by using wish magic. Upon Oryx's death, there was a covenant within the actual moment where Riven was taken that she was able to manipulate Oryx through. He essentially asked, "I can take you if you like," and Riven responded, "Only if you wish it." At that point, both Oryx and Riven started laughing. Oryx because he'd taken an Ahamkara and thus created a very powerful creature at the heart of one of his enemy's strongholds, and Riven because of the fact that she had fooled Oryx and basically written into the contract something which would eventually allow her to gain her independence back. And she did. When Oryx died, she became the one Taken being who was able to be independent of thought and mind. And that matters as well because she was able to also exert active control over the Taken in the Dreaming City. You'll notice if you played the Forsaken campaign that some of the enemies you ran into were called Taken by the Whispers, according to their title. And this is indicative of individuals that have been forced into the command structure of Riven's Taken. So yeah, she could be the nexus point for all the Taken to effectively receive orders and to be controlled from. This shows that wish magic, under the right circumstances, is enough to break out of the bonds that hold the energies of the Taken. But there is still a problem with this, because we are not talking about Riven here. We're talking about eggs. Riven's eggs are not necessarily something that had their freedom bought when she broke out of Oryx's control, and by extension the Witnesses. Just because Riven bought her own freedom and had a clever contract does not mean that she bought freedom for her offspring, and it also doesn't mean that the unborn Ahamkara would be able to attain their own autonomy in a similar manner. They've already been taken. Any chance to bargain with someone who might take them is long gone. This means that the Taken eggs might either just have been dead, or they might have been something that could eventually have hatched into Taken Ahamkara. We don't know the circumstance of it because birth is very much about growth and life, and the Taken themselves are hollowed out and practically dead individuals, devoid of all meaning but for the service of the Witness, and it's not clear how the creation of new life even factors into that. I suppose it's just worth remembering that if in the most dastardly of circumstances a Taken Ahamkara is born, it is probably going to be under the command of whoever controls the Taken generally, and that, in this instance, is no longer Xivu Arath, I'd bet. I think it's the Witness directly. A Wish Dragon in service to the Witness is something I wouldn't ever want to see unleashed. but the possibility is distinctly there because the egg is taken. If Mara Sov was planning to do something with that egg, I imagine we'll discover it next season. And at the end of all this, let's chart out some hypotheticals about that and a few other things. First of all, before we focus on anything to do with what happens if both eggs hatch, I want to go ahead and just leave one thing on the table. If you look at reproduction between creatures, such as dragons typically, in the very stereotypical sense, then it is unlikely that we will be able to see wish dragons truly escape extinction. In order to escape extinction in the bare minimum context, you need at least 4 members of the species, because, well, you need genetic diversity. But this is the thing about Destiny. We don't know how Ahamkara reproduce. We don't know if it's something that requires an egg but ultimately is an asexual process, meaning that a single member of the species might be able to reproduce and eventually bring the whole species back. We have no idea how any of it functions. So I'm going to take the same tack with this as we used to take with the Cabal, which is simply that, well, we don't know how any of this works up until we do know how it works. We now know a little bit about the social structures of the Cabal and how they're biologically suited to raise young in different ways and how it is a different process from us because, you know, they're aliens. Just in the same way, I don't know if paracausal dragons need a population of 4 at minimum from genetically diverse partners in order to survive. It could be an asexual process. It could be one that kind of transcends anything to do with that, because, I mean, you know, the Ahamkara have seemingly just sprouted out of nowhere in the remnants of the Traveler's Wake, so who knows what the hell's going on with all that. The point is, I'm not going to speculate about whether the reappearance of 1 or 2 eggs means that the entire species could be saved. I imagine, though, that that is going to be something that is touched upon next season, because you don't drive a species to extinction and then not follow up on that lore if it's at the center of a season. So, yeah, we will definitely hear about this. I do want to entertain one hypothetical, though, which is this. What if both eggs hatch? This is really going to be something that I hope we see, because you know what? That sounds like an awesome plot line. An uncorrupted egg isn't exactly aligned with either us or the Awoken or the Hive. In fact, it might be pretty hostile to everyone. The Awoken because, well, Riven was continuously contained and held prisoner practically by Mara Sov and the Awoken. The Guardians because we effectively committed genocide against the species. And the Hive because, well, they've kind of tried to do the same in the past. It's kind of a chaotic neutral entity that might be under our protection but might be a very unwilling ally. The Taken Egg, on the other hand, if it is being controlled by the Witness, would have a singular purpose, and that would be to serve the Witness. And here's the thing, if we're looking to follow the Witness through the portal into the Pale Heart of the Traveler, you can bet the Witness is going to use its new asset to focus on killing our key into the Traveler's heart, which would be the uncorrupted Ahamkara. And that means that if the series does pan out in crazy fashion, which granted, I don't think it will, but yeah, you could see a series of skirmishes between 2 dragons, a series of battles between one that is corrupted and one that isn't. 2 young Ahamkara fighting against each other would be something out of, honestly, just plain old fantasy novels, and it would be awesome to see. I highly doubt that that'd be the case, but if the 2 do battle, then yeah, that'd be incredibly dangerous and kind of incredible to see. It's especially dangerous for us or even the Awoken to take part in it, because our desire to see the uncorrupted Wish Dragon live is probably something that both Ahamkara might be able to twist to their own ends, and who knows what the result of that might end up being. Either way, this is all hypotheticals. We're not going to go ahead and see any of this until the Season of the Wish is properly revealed to us. We need to look out for that second egg, and we need to be aware of the consequences of it hatching. It could be a non-factor, but if it is something relevant, it could potentially be disastrous. If it's something that the Witness still controls, we are going to have to break out some of the old habits that Guardians had forgotten since the Great Hunt. But don't worry, there are some pretty competent dragon hunters still around the tower. If you want to learn more about them, yeah, hit subscribe, because soon we're going to be talking about the Great Hunt in that second entry to the massive series I'm doing about Ahamkara and dragons. In that one, you'll learn about the various Guardians who have actually survived the hunt, and who, well, fought some very impressive battles against dragons. For context, there's a long list of names. Zavala, Eris Morn, Ikora, Lord Saladin, Lord Shaxx, all of them have fought dragons and lived, and some of them have done so in style. So we'll be learning about that, even as disastrous as the consequences of that might be. All that being considered, if you did enjoy this video as well, you can hit subscribe and you can hit the like button. That's something which will seriously help the channel, and of course you can stay up to date with all the Destiny content that'll be releasing soon. And if you have your own thoughts, go ahead and leave them down below. In particular, let's go ahead and throw this one a bit wide and a bit general. What do you think happened to Mara's egg? And do you think that it will hatch, and if it does, will it be controlled by the Witness? I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's something which ultimately helps expand perspective, so let's enjoy that in the comments section. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Perodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.